All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Agile Leaders, the skill mastery podcast where we help you develop skills to advance as a leader through insights from accomplished founders and operators. I'm your host, Evan Shai. Today, we're joined by my friend, Walter Hughes, the CEO of Quant16 and partner at Transform VC. Walter is a brilliant operator, and his experience spans successful exits as a startup operator, global leader at Meta, and investor, bringing a unique perspective from all sides of the table. Thank you so much for being here, Walter.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, my man. I know and I'm familiar with your story, but our audience might not be. And it's been such an interesting one. Why don't we just start by sharing a little bit about your journey to Quant16?
Yeah, man. My background's like an abstract mosaic painting. So it's a lot of stuff, but there's a pattern somewhere in the middle. I started my career out in telecommunications. I actually helped lead call centers for a company called Alorica years ago. And we did call centers overseas, across the U.S. After that, I worked in the Mike Pence administration. When he was governor of Indiana, I led support for the Indiana Department of Revenue. That was a really cool job, had a lot of great opportunity. Then I had an interim role with the Public Employee Retirement Fund, or PERF. At the time, it was a $30 billion retirement fund. I think now it's probably around $40 billion, one of the best ran in the country. Did that for a very short stint, and then I went to the mayor's office in Indianapolis under Mayor Greg Ballard. I did a lot of strategy, a lot of project stuff. I'm a Six-Figure Master Black Belt, so a lot of like tactical, unique work and projects. After the mayor left, the next mayor, Mayor Joe Hogsett, came. I stayed, and I did a similar role, but this time I focused heavily on criminal justice reform, helping to tackle opioid addiction, examining homelessness reform for those experiencing homelessness, and was really doing unique things across the city. After my stint there, I went to Money Hop, a startup that I helped run and exit from. After that, I went to Anthem, and Anthem was my first time really getting back into the private sector. And Anthem is a Fortune 20 healthcare company now, Elevance Health, I believe. At Anthem, I led a lot of complex projects, particularly around the retiree systems, but my most notable project is around the banking or your FSA, your HSA business. I helped stand that business up at Anthem, and also I led that product called ActWise, is the product name. So I own that product, which is responsible for leading that. After that, I went to Meta. Meta, I was the global head of support at Meta, particularly for Reality Labs. So think of virtual reality, metaverse. I led that team globally. We had folks all over the world, a very big team, very amazing company. Probably the most unique place I've ever worked, because this is where everything I thought I knew about leadership kind of switched on its head at Meta, and in a good way. After Meta, I was tapped by Robert Blackwell to be CEO of Quant16. It's a quantitative portfolio management company that treats vendor spend as an asset class. So essentially, we treat spend as investment. And we're really coining the phrase outcomes as a service. We're finding opportunities to find alpha in other portfolios. And in addition to Quant16, I'm also a partner at Transform VC.
Sure.
Led by Rahid Mazri and Rama Shakri. And with Transform, our thesis is very straightforward. We invest in social and environmental tech that have deep technology moats, that have a 10x advantage over their competition, and are just unique in the market. And so this has been great. We recently expanded to Chicago, so I brought them here recently, and it's just been a fun ride.
Incredible, man. To say it's a mosaic is putting it lightly. Your career spanned startups, corporate, both in terms of startups, as telecommunications, tech, government, in a variety of different, dimensions and capacities. Are there any particular skills that have been most impactful to the success that you've had across these different domains?
I would say the biggest skill for me actually is the ability to learn. Mm-hmm. So, I tell people, regardless of the industry that I've been in, so I've been, as you mentioned, tech, I've been in healthcare, I've been in government. The industries are different, but the skill sets are the same.
Yep.
So regardless of the actual industry, the baseline skill set of being a leader, financial acumen, being reliable, being a collaborator, all those are things that you're going to use regardless of where you work. I can learn how to look at a PHP plan or, how to understand virtual reality, AR, VR stuff, or quantitative portfolio management principles and algorithmic trading. I can learn those things, but the skill sets that I bring with me of knowing how to lead, how to be the right partner, how to really ask tough questions, that comes from this my variety of experience. So regardless of where I work, those base skill sets will come with me.
What's interesting, particularly in your case, so there's been a common thread across all these really successful people I've had conversations with, been mentored by, et cetera. And that is like, so often, we kind of outwardly are focusing on these hard skills, these technical skills, but across the board, the skills that seem to be the most influential on people experiencing success seem to be these durable skills that end up translating across all these different dimensions. An ability to learn, would be one of those things. What is unique in your case, though, is that each of the dimensions with which you've been successful and applied that durable skill are really specialized, challenging topics. So, I have to presume, maybe you have a unique propensity or ability to learn quickly. Do you think that's just like a natural trait, or is there like tactics that you've learned to be able to do that effectively?
I don't do anything special. I think it's a tactical trait, I guess, or natural trait. When I went to Meta, for example, that was actually I'll go back. When I went to Anthem was probably the most different because healthcare is so complex.
Okay.
And within healthcare, you have commercial business and government business and pharmacy. Then within each, there's different rules, each state, there's a different rule, and all this stuff. It was ridiculous. What I found is I treated it like a puzzle. And so when I went to my first project at Anthem was government business. Government business is not black and white. And so it's literally going to be different per state versus the federal government. And I just treat it like a puzzle. So I found what's common.
Yep.
And then I learned what's different. And that's kind of how I think it. Like you think about math. There's a branch of math called fractal geometry, which is the study of self-similar systems. And so that's kind of how I approach things. I look for what's common. Those things I don't spend much time on because I can learn this quickly. And then what's different, that's why I kind of focus on learning, because then that's where I can kind of add value because it's unique. And so that's kind of my trick.
That is actually really, really helpful. So you have a set of mental models, or you try to find common ground or commonality between things that you've done. You're able to kind of set those things aside and hone in on the things that are new that you really need to get ramped up on. Maybe even just that ability alone, sets you ahead and allows you to be able to focus where other people might get, bogged down or overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things they need to learn,
It's true. The biggest advice I give people coming up is focus on impact and when you can add value. That's what really matters. No one cares how long you work. They don't care how hard you work. What did you do? What value did you bring? And then what was the impact of your work? Like when I read resumes, I hate reading resumes that just have I did 16 widgets and I did 13. Who cares? What was the impact of that work? By you doing this, you enabled what? Right? And so in my own career, I've always focused on my impact and what did I drive? What did I lead? What did I give to make something bigger happen?
That might be one of the more important points that I think people need to understand. It's certainly advice I would have given myself in the beginning of my career. Although I've always been an entrepreneur, so by nature, I was in a situation where I only ate if I was successful and did things effectively. So I guess it forced that to happen. But for people on our team, especially after some of our conversations, I've been almost framing it that way, where it's like, think about the impact that you're having in a way to where in subsequent opportunities, you don't have to explain or provide all this context around, how what you did was valuable. It's just clear. You impacted the business in this way,
Exactly.
Is there, like, when you have looked back on your career and kind of going in all these different, not necessarily directions, but again, being successful in these different domains, was mentorship or network an important part of that process, or not so much for you?
That sounds so crazy. I've actually never had a mentor. I've never had someone I can call or get advice from. I've always had to figure it out, which is why I mentor so much now. one thing I have learned, though, I've kind of pieced together, is it's not about who you know. It's about who knows you. And so the biggest advice I can give to folks is get known. I haven't applied for a job since 2007 or 8. Every job is because someone knew me. They recommended me, or something happened on LinkedIn. And, hey, you should do this. I mean, it's always been that way for me. And I realized this whole trying to know everyone doesn't work, but people who know me matters. So back to my impact. When you make a positive impact places, people mention your name in places, they bring you up, that comes around. As far as the mentorship piece, I think I would have loved to have had a mentor. I would have loved to have had a support system. I just wasn't that fortunate. I think one of my biggest issues as a young professional coming up is people always assume that I just had it. It's assuming that, Walt's going to figure it out, which I will. But it would have been nice to have support.
Sure. It might have been able to accelerate some of those lessons and learnings and growth. I think similarly, I really underestimated it. Although you didn't say you underestimated it, maybe you just didn't have access to it. Maybe those are somewhat related or synonymous. For me, I undervalued it, underestimated it, didn't spend a ton of time trying to build those relationships. It wasn't until I went through Techstars NYC where kind of forced that experience happen, and now I really value that type of experience, and similarly to you, try to give back and lift others up.
Well, you can't give back if you didn't take it, right? So probably Black Close said recently,
I like that.
Because you can't give something back you didn't take. So you're not giving back, you're reaching back and you're pulling folks forward. That's what you're doing. You're not giving anything back because you didn't take anything. What you're doing is you're helping others in their opportunity. One thing I'll say is one of my biggest reasons for success is I was given the opportunity. So Ryan at Transform BC, he talks about soccer, and I want to relate to basketball. And LeBron James is arguably the best basketball player today. I like LeBron, I'm more of a Michael Jordan fan, but do your thing. How many other LeBron James exist out there who just don't have this opportunity?
Sure.
They don't have the ability to get seen. And so my goal is to democratize that opportunity for people and be that place for them. At EChat Digital Transfer, Quant 16, we employ those people, right? At Transform BC, we invest in those companies. So we look for those people who are stars who just don't have the opportunity to shine. Nice. And I think that's something that happened for me. I was given an opportunity. And if it wasn't for early in my career, the chance to work in the Pitts administration and the ballot administration and the Hawks, I think my career will be in a much different place right now.
Sure. Is there, so you mentioned two ways in which you are very meaningfully providing people a platform or an opportunity to show up and perform. Is there anything outside of either investing in or hiring those folks directly that you're doing? I know you end up doing a decent amount of mentorship and things like that. So I'm just curious, how else you think about it?
Well, mentorship to me is important, and I take it a step further. I mentor, but I also sponsor. And those that I mentor, I care about. I'm invested in them. But those that I sponsor, I'm invested in them. I really want them to be successful, and so I do things a bit differently. So those that I sponsor means I see something in you, or there's something about you that I think is worth highlighting. And my close friends my close sponsors who become friends.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see their journeys now, to see what they're doing, and and new people that I've met this year. Actually, thanks to Benny Matthew. Benny runs Orion 3, and because of Benny, I met some amazing young people that I didn't know existed in Chicago, that I sing their praises every time I see them. Ken Clay is one of my most favorite people in the world. Claude Seamus, absolutely amazing. Landon Campbell. Oh my freaking gosh! Where have you been all my life? It's amazing to see people, and then I love the opportunities to support them in any way I can and be in their corner.
I love it, man. It's so awesome, and agreed on all counts of those folks. Some of my favorite people in Chicago, just generally, actually. So, kind of zooming back to your role at Quant 16 and just how your role across these different, leadership positions that you've held throughout your career, how do you balance the need to either specialize in certain skills with the need to just maintain a broad skill set?
Oof. Well, one, I focus on where I'm good at. So you got to identify what you know how to do, and acknowledge that you don't. Like, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I will acknowledge that. But I'm also very business savvy. I know how to ask for what I want. So right now with Quant 16, I'm not a salesperson. Robert isn't a salesperson. But we know how to talk. We're pretty smart.
Sometimes it's the best people are the people that aren't salespeople.
Well, we'll see. But it's what I've realized is I can take skills that I am good at and augment where I'm bad, right? So I can use those skill sets to uplift other areas. And so for me, I focus really goes back to impact. Where can I give impact? Traditionally, my impact is in leadership. I can sell water to a well when it comes to getting you to be the best employee ever, right? I can motivate you to move a mountain. I know I can do that, but I also know I'm not the type of guy that's going to go out and sell things, all this other stuff. But then I realized there's things about my skill set that I can do to apply to other things. And so my biggest advice is start with where you're strong and be world class at it, right? Be the best at it. And then, learn, still take time to learn and improve yourself in other areas.
I guess on that last piece, when you think about, making time to learn, how exactly do you think about that with the demands of all the things that you're juggling currently on a day-to-day basis? Like, how do you prioritize, or even just more specifically, like make time for learning and growing?
Well, two things. One, you can't boil the ocean.
Yeah.
So, there's that. But two, I'm kind of old school. So I put everything on a 1 through 10 scale. If everything is a 10, nothing is a 10. Now, my 9s and 10s would change every day, but traditionally, I will do my 9s and 10s. If it's a 9 or a 10 for me that day, I will do it. A 7 and an 8, I'm going to work my darnest to do it. And if it's a 1 through a 6, I'm not going to get to it today. And that's okay. And when you have that kind of freedom to think about it that way, it's less daunting.
Yeah.
The world is still on fire and it's still going to be over there, and I still got all kind of stuff to do. But when I focus in that way, it keeps me sane. And allows me to give impact where I feel I can best give it.
I think it actually circles back to one of your points earlier, the ability of like identifying what it is that you need to focus on and lean into. I think those types of models, and oftentimes are the very simple methods or frameworks that you can utilize in order to identify what those things are that matter. And it's not about being perfectly accurate in your evaluation assessment of, is that the best use of your time? It's almost just like, is it very likely that these are the most impactful things? And simply the ability of just focusing on and doing some things well, the 20% that makes the 80% of the difference or value, that is the really like liberating factor. That's the element of leverage for sure.
Yep.
When you think about, one of your superpowers, and I certainly can see this in you, in terms of leading and motivating, team members and other leaders, how do you think about yourself as, a boss, leader, coach? Are you more of a servant leader? Like, how do you think about yourself like that as a leader? I think oftentimes, especially young leaders who are ambitious, growing their teams, it can be a struggle of knowing kind of where you should be rolling up your sleeves and leaning in versus where you should be trying to empower other folks and decentralizing command, if you will.
So in my view, leadership is dynamic. There is no level playing. And
Sure.
Back in my MBA days, and I can't remember the name of this thing that escaped me, but some listener will know, there's the 4 Punnett squares of leadership. And so there's leading, there's directing, there's supporting, and I forget the last one.
Is it like Punnett score of leadership or something?
Yes, it's 4 areas, like leading, supporting, directing. And so depending on your team, where you are, where they are, you're going to transform. And so for me, I meet folks where they are. And so I'll give you an example at Meta. I probably had the most As a matter of fact, at Meta, my team at Meta was in every square. So I had some folks who I could just direct. I would have to direct them. I would have to tell them exactly what I'm looking for, how I want it, what they need to go do. On the other side, I had some folks who were getting there. So it was really more of just, giving direction, but kind of laying low. Then I had others I just had to support. I didn't have to be prescriptive. I didn't have to give this. So as a leader, your job is to meet folks where they are, not what you want them to be, but where they want to go. And so my job as leader is to take you from where you are to where you want to go, not where I want you to go. And so it's difficult to be a selfless leader. It's very difficult because you have this objective of the business, right? And you're going after, but you have people you have to support that have to deliver this work. And so the best leaders I've come across are those who can meet folks where they are, regardless of the level.
Yeah.
And help them move.
Okay. So then does the challenge, the opportunity then become at the kind of front end of the hiring life cycle, if you will, and identifying the folks who where they want to go is aligned with and consistent with the direction or objective of the organization?
Not necessarily. Correct. So I'll say this. Early in my career, I thought that when I was very young and I was hiring people, I wanted to have people who were like me, right? Who thought the way I thought. We get an interview, we hit. But now I realize I don't need a bunch of me's in the room.
Yeah, for sure.
Who needs a bunch of yes people? You need people that are going to challenge you, that can make you better. When you have a really good team that's albeit better than you, it makes you look even better, right? And so what I realized is I want to go after world-class people who do the best, who are excellent at their work. We may call things different names, we may have different interpretations, but the value, we complement each other. Mm-hmm. That's what I liked. My current team right now at Quant 16 ECAD Digital with Robert and Hollis, we don't always agree. We don't always have the same viewpoints, but our skills complement each other, and our work together is fantastic. And so, when you're a young hiring manager or a hiring manager of any sort, you don't just hire people that fit a box, right? You need to think about the whole person and think about the skill sets they bring that complement yours, and also it can take your business even higher. I'm a musician, so I always say, without diversity, there can be no harmony. And so you want that. You want a diversity of mind, diversity of everything when you in your practices.
I love it. I almost, when we think about it internally, and this has taken me a while in my career to really hone in on this, but I think my core function as a CEO is really to assemble and develop the best possible team, almost independent of me, and then facilitate the guidance and resources that they need to be successful.
That's correct.
It feels like more of a head coach type of vibe to it almost,
Like I said, I'm a musician, so I liken it to the director of a symphony.
Right? There you go.
And I'm going for, and I have the first violins, I have the cellos, I have the second violins, and they're all different sounds, different notes, but they're all going to the same and marching to the same endpoint, right? So the music's gonna be different, the notes are gonna look different, they're gonna sound different, but the outcomes are the same. A hurrah at the end, right? And so that's how I think about it.
Well, how you think about this and how you think about a lot of things is never short of absolutely fascinating and inspiring, man. You are truly a mosaic or a Renaissance man, if you will. I feel, inspired every time we have a conversation. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom with me and the audience. And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Anytime you need me, man, I'm down.
I appreciate it, brother.